Hampton Court on the edge of London. Once a famous pleasure ground of Henry VIII, today it attracts almost 1 million visitors a year.
That's the number one question. Where's the Royal Loo?
It's one of Britain's biggest and most historic palaces.
It was the room Henry processed through on the way to chapel on Sundays.
Now it's getting ready to celebrate Christmas past.
They're 1 mince pie.
And that's quite a beast, isn't it?
And present. They're decking the halls.
If a bit of mistletoe encourages people to love each other more, then that's a great thing, isn't it?
And celebrating Christmas in style.
I mean, what do you buy the woman who has everything?
Inside and out.
This is an incredibly magical place at Christmas.
Welcome to Christmas at Hampton Court. It's just a few weeks till Christmas, and warder Errol Clayton is first in to start work.
There's something about Hampton Court that really suits the Christmas season. It makes it a really exciting place to be.
Everyone's really happy, everyone's got a spring in their step.
First built over 500 years ago, Hampton Court Palace is vast with a staggering 1,300 rooms and 23 courtyards, all surrounded by over 800 acres of spectacular parks and gardens.
I'm going to go meet my colleague Kitty and then start getting the palace ready for Christmas, putting the decorations up. Right, so we've got about 5 minutes.
Morning, Errol.
Good morning.
First, Errol and Kitty have to unlock the palace.
So, start opening.
The Hampton Court team have a huge challenge ahead of them. They've got just 2 days to get the palace decorated and ready for the first Christmas visitors. Out in the grounds, Gardens and Estates Manager Graham Dillamore is feeling the festive spirit.
I have to pinch myself every day, and I love every single minute, every single day, every single hour that I'm here at Hampton Court Palace.
Today, Graham's got an especially festive job, selecting Christmas greenery to decorate the palace courtyards.
Well, here is one of my favourites. This variegated holly, a really, really ancient and a very, very special tree for us here at Hampton Court.
These formal gardens were originally laid out over 3 centuries ago.
We think this tree could be one of the original topiary specimens that was here 300 years ago. So I always look at this tree in most mornings just to make sure it's still there.
In ancient times, holly was thought to have magical powers. Its prickly green leaves in winter meant good luck and protection, making it a perfect Christmas decoration.
We try and use holly wherever we can. We don't use too much because, especially on these really old trees, I always feel a bit sad when we start hacking away at an old tree that's been here for 300 years.
Inside, Errol is opening up the part of the palace that's as old as that holly tree. The King's apartments. Built around 1700 for King William III.
I would have loved to have experienced Hampton Court at Christmas time when you've got these amazing theatrical experiences from Shakespeare performing a play, and you've got these big dances, and you've got a massive feast. So I don't think I would have been allowed in those rooms, so I'd probably been in the kitchens cooking.
Now the interpretations team can move in with this year's decorations.
So I think we should put these in the Queen's stairs and the King's stairs.
Emma Bell is in charge of this mammoth task.
The decorating process takes about 2 days if everything goes to plan, which sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes things break and we have to try and replace them on the spot. So you do feel a bit of pressure to make sure it looks really, really nice.
The decorations include mountains of foliage, 100 electric candles, and 70 specially made scented bags, all carefully prepared for a super-sensitive, historic royal palace.
We're not allowed things like glitter because it gets absolutely everywhere and into our collections and onto our tapestries and things, and it's really difficult to get out.
And the decorations need to be in keeping with Hampton Court's Tudor history.
All of the plants that you associate with Christmas now would have been exactly the same in the Tudor time. Ivy was a popular thing to have in the Tudor period, so we're just adding some extras to our displays.
Tudor displays were always scented, so the team are weaving seasonal fragrances into their design.
We're placing the lanterns on the steps on a bit of protective material, putting a garland around them and decorating it with a bit of cinnamon and orange. It smells amazing.
In her office in one of Hampton Court's ancient turrets, Historic Royal Palace's Joint Chief Curator, Tracy Borman,
Just check they still work, yes.
is also getting ready for the season.
Not bad for £1, really. I absolutely love Christmas at Hampton Court. The palace has this really special atmosphere. We put our decorations up here in the curator's office, although a little bit less impressive, if I'm honest, than the decorations in the main palace. Well, these are my favourite decorations because, of course, Henry and his 6 wives. You wouldn't expect anything else really for the curator's office.
For Tudor monarchs, Hampton Court was the place to celebrate Christmas, especially if you enjoyed receiving presents. The Queen most famous for her whopping great Christmas list was Elizabeth I. During her time at Hampton Court, gift-giving reached dizzying heights. Elizabeth's present-giving ceremony was held downstairs not far from Tracy's office. To get there, Tracy's taking a little-used secret staircase.
I've only been down here once before when I first started here at Hampton Court.
No one knows why this shortcut exists, but it comes out through a hidden doorway just next to one of the most spectacular rooms in the palace.
This is the Great Watching Chamber, and it lay directly next to the monarch's private apartments. And what I love about this space is it's pretty much exactly as it would have been 450 years ago. You can see up above the beautiful gold-embellished ceiling. I think it's got a really unique atmosphere in here.
The Great Watching Chamber got its name because this was where courtiers would wait to see the monarch, and Elizabeth I didn't disappoint when it came to the Christmas party.
And from those doors just behind me there, Elizabeth would have processed from her private apartments to chapel. It was sort of like a Tudor catwalk with courtiers either side looking at what she's wearing. So you can imagine it must have been an absolute riot of colour and magnificence and bling, quite frankly.
Elizabeth must have had the biggest pile of presents in the country. Every single one of her 1,000 guests was expected to bring her a lavish gift, and Elizabeth herself decided exactly how much each person should spend on her.
Well, I have here a list of all the gifts that Elizabeth received on one particular Christmas here at Hampton Court in 1577. And goodness me, what a list it is. There is an awful lot of gold. She's getting money from lots of her courtiers. Her ladies are giving her everything from perfumed gloves to fine worked flowers with birds and beasts on silk. Each gift was presented separately to the Queen, each one carefully recorded, and this list goes on for pages and pages, so there's no sense of ripping open your presents in about half an hour. It must have gone on for most of the day.
And heaven help the nobleman who got it wrong.
I mean, what do you buy the woman who has everything? I think I would have had absolutely no idea, and probably I'd have been for the chop as a result.
These days, Christmas isn't quite so extravagant here at Hampton Court, but in the gardens, Graham's in search of some traditional decoration the Tudors would have been very familiar with, mistletoe. And here at the palace, there's plenty of it.
We've got great big avenues of lime trees, and the lime tree is very, very receptive to mistletoe. The mistletoe sets its seed in the little nooks and crannies of the bark, transferred through bird. So the mistle thrush, of which we've got quite a few around here at Hampton Court, will fly amongst the trees, and it is very fond of the berries, the seed. I can remember it starting off on 1 or 2 trees. It moved through the trees very, very quickly, and now you end up with these wonderful giant Christmas baubles hanging from the tree.
But too much mistletoe can be a problem. It can weaken its host tree. So Graham is teaming up with fellow gardener Martin Einschcombe to cut it back and get some Christmas decorations at the same time.
Yeah, I thought we'd do this tree.
Right.
Because it's just really badly infested on this corner.
Yeah.
Okay. I can almost hear the tree going, oh, thank God for that.
Breathe a sigh of relief.
Get it off me.
The ancient Druids regarded mistletoe as sacred and used it for medicine and to aid fertility.
I think that piece is quite nice as it is. I mean, they could probably use that to decorate.
Yeah.
The popular Christmas tradition of stealing a kiss under the mistletoe began centuries ago.
Just because I'm standing under here, Martin, I don't want you any ideas of giving me a peck on the cheek either.
I mean, this is quite a large piece, isn't it? It's, yeah.
Right. Take that. Bosh. Yeah, if you don't get anyone kiss you, Martin, carrying that around the palace, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, I think there could well be. Thank you.
Using evergreens like mistletoe to decorate your home symbolised the promise of new life come spring.
Well, I think it's lovely to have a bit of mistletoe in your house, and if it encourages people to love each other more, then that's a great thing, isn't it?
But this mistletoe will be used strictly outside because it's banned inside the precious historic rooms. Here, it's artificial leaves only.
We don't use fresh foliage in our displays because they attract pests, and the pests can then eat into the beautiful collection. So yeah, we're on the hunt for fake red berries.
With the Christmas visitors due shortly, it's all hands to the pump to make sure everything's ready in time. Coming up, new Shire horsefoal George is getting excited about a very special celebration. And we discover just how turned upside down a Tudor Christmas could be.
Even Henry VIII bowed to the authority of the Lord of Misrule.
It's the run-up to Christmas at Hampton Court. And at the palace stables, there's a buzz of excitement.
Now just be careful because he's a bit of a lad as well.
Hampton Court's team of 11 rare breed Shire horses are being primped and platted for a very special event. The traditional annual blessing. For the 2 youngest, it'll be their first time up at the palace.
Gorgeous George. Hiya, sweetie. Oh, you are a little monkey headbutting mummy.
Head coachman Ed McDowell has been working with the Hampton Court Shire horses for almost 30 years.
Today is the annual blessing of the Shire horses. So we'll be taking them up to the palace, and the chaplain, the royal chaplain, will come out and a bit of a spiritual MOT really, give them their blessing. So it's a good excuse to get them all dressed up and looking good, and hopefully they'll behave themselves in their finest.
This year, there are 2 new foals, George and Charles, who are being looked after by groom Alistair Mills.
So this is Charles, Sterling Charles, is our latest addition to the herd. That brings the Shires up to 11. So Charles is going to be friends with George, who was born here in the summer.
George is particularly special, as he's the first Shire horse foal to be born at Hampton Court in 100 years. As a youngster, George is still getting used to being around people. Tom Nixon is taking care of him today.
They're young and they're feisty at this age, and they just want to be free, and they want to play and bite and do all the things that both teenagers do, isn't it?
The grooms are trying to tie bows to his tail for the blessing.
This is another first for him, a new experience for him. He's going to be messing around with his tail. He's been great. He's been really good.
Like his older stablemates, George has already got a big character.
Every single horse we have has its own personality as well. I mean, I've got my human colleagues, I've got my horse colleagues.
First bred for Henry VIII as a war horse, shires were designed to be the Tudor equivalent of a tank. Once commonly used for agricultural work in the UK, adult shires are around 6 feet tall and weigh nearly a ton. For today's festive event, the shires need to look their very best, and to help them, they've got their own horse hairdresser, Pip Reed. But plaiting the manes of these giant shires means a stepladder is called for. It's making rescue horse Henry a little anxious.
That's it. Once you get a start, he'll chill out. Whoosh the man. He's really good in most things, but this is all new to him as well. She has to be above him to see what he's doing, and he's quite nervous of that,
Even young Charles the Foal gets his tail plaited. And a squirt of hairspray doesn't seem to faze him at all.
He's very good-natured, he's very chilled out, and you can see he doesn't mind the work in his tail at all. It's the first time he's ever had this done, yeah.
There's still a couple of hours to go before the spruced-up horses and their grooms arrive at the palace for their blessing. A mile away, inside the Chapel Royal, Father Anthony and chapel clerk James Harris are preparing for the Christmas carol service, putting out the solid gold altar plate.
Right, where do you want those?
Yeah, just slightly on the angle.
There's an ancient tradition in the church that you put the best on display for the festivals of the year. So we're putting this out on display for the carol services. These are communion vessels which were made for the chapel in the reign of William III. And you can see his royal cipher entwined with that of his wife, Queen Mary. Imagine them drinking out of that. They would have been drunk by the end of it.
For Father Anthony, this is a wonderful time to enjoy this unique chapel that's been used by royalty right back to the time of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I.
This is one of the most beautiful places, I think, in the country, if not the world. I'm rather in love with it, I have to say. But Christmas here is really special. It's exhausting. I need to have a good sleep on Christmas afternoon, but actually it's really worth it.
For Father Anthony, the decorations on the chapel tree have a special significance.
These are what we call our Christmas angels, and most years people sponsor one of these in memory of a loved one. Because this time of year can be very, very difficult and people can be very lonely, and they find a lot of comfort in the fact that their loved ones are remembered here in chapel.
Hampton Court has seen 23 monarchs come and go, but it's still most closely associated with the Tudors. Normally, life here in Tudor times was subject to a very strict code of behaviour. But all that was turned upside down at Christmas, when a servant was chosen to take the place of the king and become the Lord of Misrule. In the Great Hall, Tracy Borman is exploring this strange seasonal tradition.
I wonder what it must have been like to be Lord of Misrule in Henry's court. The person was always chosen from a very humble background. Probably they'd spent their life here at court serving the king, obeying his every command, perhaps envying his riches and magnificence. And then, suddenly, they got to take his place.
In Tudor times, there weren't just 2 or 3 days of Christmas, there were 12. So for nearly a fortnight, the Lord of Misrule was in charge, presiding over the festive mayhem. But he had to have some nerve to boss around the most terrifying king in British history.
Even Henry VIII bowed to the authority of the Lord of Misrule. In the first year of his reign, the position was filled by a man named Will Winsbury, who very cheekily asked for £5 towards his expenses. Fortunately for him, Henry saw the joke.
£5 in Tudor times would be worth over £3,000 today. These days, Christmas is a little less crazy. though there are still plenty of festive traditions passed down the ages. Outside, Emma is waiting for a special delivery.
Hello.
Hi, Emma. How are you?
Good, thanks. Got
Good,
the last
good.
one.
Yeah, the last holly tree.
Last one to go in. It's
Yeah.
looking lovely. So this is our last spot here.
Yeah, OK. I'll put this in position.
That looks really great.
At Hampton Court, even the little holly trees have a story.
There is a bit of history behind them. They date from the 17th century, believe it or not. Basically, when we restored William III's Privy Garden, before these trees were obviously cleared to restore the garden, a lot of cuttings were taken. So small bits of holly taken off and rooted and grown on, and hence we got these today.
So there is literally history wherever you look in the palace,
There
even
is,
in the
there
garden.
is.
But even though the trees will remain outside, Emma must carefully remove every single hollyberry and replace them with 250 replicas.
Red berries are really, really bad for staining stone floors, and this floor is very, very old, about 300 years old, so we definitely wouldn't be able to get that off. And there's no stains on it so far, so I don't want to be the one responsible for staining the 300-year-old floor.
At the stables, the horses are nearly ready to set off for the palace, and Ed can't resist giving a last-minute scratch.
They love attention, they love it. I mean, this lad, if you sort of scratch his ears, his old lip starts going there and he just loves it, you know. There's a bit of an Elvis lip there, he gets.
Finally, even young George has a ribbon in his tail.
OK, Heath.
And it's time to go.
Alex.
Looking good. Look at them. All plaited up, raring to go. It's a lovely sight, isn't it? What could be nicer than that? Little George and little Charles.
Up at the palace, Father Anthony is getting ready to meet them, preparing for a ritual that goes back to when horses powered British farming.
It's a really exciting day today because we're going to be blessing the Hampton Court Shires. It's a very simple thing, and it's a tradition that comes from blessing of the plough and the blessing of the fields, which has been going on for centuries.
Back in the park, Ed is struggling to keep up.
They definitely are moving at a fair pace. They've spent the last 2 days being primped and prettied up, so they haven't had a lot of exercise, so they're really full of it, you know. Especially the youngsters at the back, they're a bit of a handful.
Come on, son.
Oh, he's doing a lot better than George, for my money. George is looking like a handful. Not that it's a competition.
Ed is hoping young George and Charles will behave themselves today.
I wouldn't like to predict, really, how they're going to behave. Hopefully they'll be good, but, you know, this is their first time, especially George. It's his first time actually out in the wide open. He's only been in the fields with his mum.
So now I need to get some more kit on. There's always something else to wear in this job. The outer thing is called a cope, which is a big cloak, which is made of beautiful damask material. And these are worn for special occasions. It's lovely and warm as well, actually, because it's a bit cold outside. And last but not least, the mortarboard. This has done quite a bit of battle service, and actually part of it's a trade secret in that I actually have the vestry prayer that I say or sing before the services, because I can't remember anything.
Outside, the horses are lining up for their big moment, and Father Anthony comes out to say hello to the new boys.
So you're new too, hello.
Oh, easy.
Oh, hello.
Now everyone has calmed down, Father Anthony can begin.
So we come today to bless the magnificent Shires, to ask God for his protection for them for the coming year.
Blessing each horse with the holy water, starting with young Charles.
Easy, son. Easy, son.
He's going to be a big lad.
George holds steady, but others are a little shy.
Oh, a little nervous, there we are.
Went very well. I thought they would play up a lot more, the young lads, because they've never experienced this, but they were very good. I think the vicar had a calming effect on them all.
Young George behaved himself. It's always a bit difficult when they're new to it, and especially he's a teenager, so you know what teenagers are like. It's a beautiful thing, and actually it's lovely to be with the horses, and so it starts the festive season for us all.
Let's catch up, eh?
Coming up, Hampton Court gets its Christmas centrepiece.
It's a little bit late, but it's also a bit tense because it's the first time we've put it here.
Tracy discovers a Tudor Christmas treat.
Dig in,
Get a bit of raisin, bit of meat.
And the palace prepares for a slimmed-down carol service.
There's nothing really that speaks to the soul in the same way as a bit of Christmas music.
At Hampton Court, Christmas comes supersized, and the tree is no exception.
So we're just waiting for the Christmas tree to arrive, which will be put up inside the colonnade here.
A giant Norway spruce is about to be delivered for the palace's Christmas opening. In charge of operations is Emma Bell.
It's a little bit late and it takes quite a few hours to get it up, so we've got our work cut out for us.
The tree is the centrepiece of the palace's Christmas festivities, so it's essential it's installed on time. And to make things even trickier, this year the palace is trying out a new location, under the historic colonnade in Clock Court.
It's exciting getting it in, but it's also a bit tense because it's the first time we've put it here.
It's crucial that the precious palace is completely unscathed when the tree goes up.
The floor and also the colonnade around us here is part of the original building designed by Christopher Wren. We've got to be really, really careful of these pillars. So that's something that we've not done before. The pressure is on to get it right here.
The 18-foot spruce has travelled 500 miles from the Scottish Highlands. It takes 7 workmen to put it up.
We have to protect the floor, so we have to put down plywood first and make sure everything is brushed away from underneath it so that nothing can scratch this floor. It looks really scary when it's hanging off the van like that. Yeah, it's a very tight space to get it in. We have to be really careful when lifting an 18-foot Christmas tree into the space.
The huge tree has to be manoeuvred through the pillars, designed more than 300 years ago by Sir Christopher Wren.
I'm just a bit nervous in case when they cut the cable the tree pops out, and if it hits the wooden door that's not a good thing. Fingers crossed. Do you think it's going to be clear? I'm actually really impressed. The calculations at the top are perfect. They said they would pick us a narrow tree and they've definitely done that, so it's a really good fit. It's done. That was the thing I was worried about the most.
The tree is so tall, the top had to be decorated before it was put up. And before 180 metres of Christmas lights go on.
It does smell like Christmas. It's so lovely to have something real. The tree is looking amazing. It's so much better now the lights are on. And it's all started to fall into place.
Although they seem traditional, trees are a relatively new addition to British Christmas celebrations. In the 1840s, Prince Albert made Christmas trees popular when he brought one over from Germany. He put it up in Windsor Castle and covered it in little gifts and candles. We've been decorating our trees ever since.
We have 631 decorations going on the tree in total, so it takes quite a long time to put them on. But they're all lovely in gold this year. They always look quite pretty and quite regal, because it has to be, because we're in a palace.
With the last bauble in place, Emma gives it all a once-over.
I'm just finishing up some final tweaks to make sure that I'm happy with the tree. It's the last piece of the decoration install, so everything's now done. I'm just really excited for people to see it now, and I hope that they all love it as much as I do.
It's the day before Hampton Court welcomes its visitors for Christmas. The celebrations wouldn't be complete without the palace's very own ice rink. Manager Luke Bowyer is making sure the surface is perfect.
So we're just putting down the final layer of water at Hampton Court Palace Ice Rink. It holds around 174,000 litres in total.
Luke set up the rink at the palace every winter for the last 8 years.
It's a fantastic place just due to its historical significance. I mean, like, what a fantastic view to come to and see every day and admire. It's really nice to obviously engage with all the public and the locals as well.
In the Chapel Royal, Father Anthony and Chapel Clerk James Harris are discussing the final preparations for the Hampton Court Carol service.
There's nothing really that speaks to the soul in the same way as a bit of Christmas music. This is an incredibly magical place to hold a service. It's the glorious surroundings, the roof. It almost feels like it's a Christmas decoration every day of the year. And so once it does come to Christmas, it's that extra special feeling. The service traditionally begins with Once in Royal David's City, a very popular hymn that's sung at Christmas, with a solo. That's an amazing moment. The spine tingles. And it takes me back to being a treble myself in a little village church in Suffolk, very different from this place, where I sang the solo. And I remember the excitement and the fear of doing this and trying to keep in tune when the choir came in and when the organ came in.
And then we can talk to the Director of Music about where he'd like the gentlemen to be positioned.
There are only 6 of them.
Only 6.
This year, for the first time ever, the carol service will be broadcast worldwide on the internet, so there's even more pressure to get things right.
And where do you want to put me?
I think if you take a seat in the sanctuary,
right,
and I'll be opposite you.
Yes, lovely.
Just so I can support you if anything goes wrong during the service.
Oh, I hope it doesn't.
Like carol singing, eating till you burst is also a Christmas tradition. Chief Curator Tracy Borman has come to the Great Hall. It's seen some of the biggest Christmas dinners of all time, hosted by that legendary gourmet, King Henry VIII.
When it came to Christmas, Henry VIII liked to spend big. In his first year as king, he spent £7,000 on the celebrations. Well, to give you an idea of what a staggering sum that was, it's equivalent to £4.6 million today.
And a lot of that money went on food.
500 years ago, food was just as important a part of the Christmas celebrations as it is today. With up to 1,000 people attending the royal court, Tudor feasts could be a truly epic affair.
For Christmas, a popular ingredient would be fresh meat, a real luxury at the time. Henry VIII could have been one of the first people to eat turkey at Christmas, as they were introduced to Britain in the 1520s. His guests could also choose from swan, beef, pork, or peacock. But for Henry's servants below stairs, Christmas meant slaving away in the vast palace kitchens, churning out mountains of food for the party in the Great Hall. Food was so important to Henry VIII that the kitchens took up an entire third of the palace. Richard Fitch is the historic kitchen's manager. Today he's making a Tudor Christmas classic that was a hit with rich and poor alike.
We're stood in the middle of Henry VIII's Great Kitchen here at Hampton Court Palace. We are going to be making a mince pie recipe from 1591. It's one of the earliest surviving written recipes that we've got for minced pies. First step is to make the pastry, because it needs time to rest. The oven will be a wood-fired oven, much more like we're used to seeing with a pizza today. So the base of the pie needs to be relatively stable and strong so that it can withstand that heat shock.
Mince pies were so popular during the festive season, they were known as Christmas pies. They were a big hit with Tudor travellers driving home for Christmas.
Pie shops are reasonably common. They are situated at the entrances and exits to the city because they're the equivalent of stopping off at the service station. You pick up a pie, pick up some bread for your horse, and then away you go. So it's no different to filling up with a pie from the garage and topping up with the petrol before you leave. Right, so that's the pastry done. We'll leave that there to rest. And the next job is the leg of lamb.
As well as minced lamb, pies for Henry's table would also contain expensive exotic spices imported from all over the world. Ginger, mace, long pepper and cinnamon, all from the Far East. There was also rich red saffron from closer to home.
The only spice that isn't imported is the saffron, which is grown throughout Essex, around Walden, later to become Saffron Walden. People in the past were no different to us. They like their food to be interesting.
Once all the spices, fruit and meat are mixed together, it's ready for the pastry.
We'll make the pie case around the filling. That also helps hold it together.
At Christmas in Henry VIII's time, these kitchens were buzzing with over 200 cooks preparing food for 2 stonking great meals a day. One at 10 in the morning and the other at 4 in the afternoon. And the royal meal couldn't be late.
I'm imagining come 5 to 10, 5 to 4, every day, it's going to be shouting, it's going to be screaming, there's going to be people, why isn't that ready, where is it?
The heat in the Hampton Court kitchens would have been intense as the palace staff worked to create lavish dishes for the nobles upstairs in the Great Hall.
I have here a copy of the menu from Henry VIII's Christmas feast on the 29th of December 1528. Well, I kind of think that I make an effort at Christmas, but it's nothing compared to this. 40 different dishes over 4 courses. Well, looking across it, some of it sounds actually quite appealing. Orange tart, marzipans. Not so sure about the tongue-in jelly, but a whole array of different dishes, and in particular, meat. That's very dominant in the menu. You get the feeling if it sat still for long enough, it would be killed and served on the Tudor table.
Researching Tudor menus has given Tracy an appetite, so she's followed the scent of cooking down to the kitchens.
So it smells very good in here. What have you got for me?
Hot out of the oven, we've got a Tudor mince pie from a recipe from 1591.
Well, that's not what I think of with a mince pie, which is obviously a nice little cake that you can hold in your hand. That's quite a beast, isn't it?
It's absolutely not a cake. It is a mince pie, and what would go in mince pie? Well, mince. In this case, it's minced lamb. This is more fit for the king. Lots of dried fruit, lots of exotic imported spices.
Well, it does look rather delicious. I'm looking forward to tasting a little bit. I'm getting more of the aroma as you're cutting open. It smells delicious.
Help
I'm
yourself.
going to go for it. Okay. Oh, it's quite solid, isn't it?
It will be quite firm because minced meat that's been packed together. Dig in, dig in.
Get a bit of raisin, bit of meat. At first, all you taste is the meat, but then the spices start to come through, and there's a little bit of a kick there, actually.
Yeah.
That is quite an expensive mix, isn't it?
It is, but we're in quite an expensive house. If you're going to be the king, there's no point in being a poor king, and that goes from the very top, the clothes, the building, the decoration, all the way down to the food that's served.
Fine dining, Tudor style.
As evening draws in, there is a buzz of excitement in the Chapel Royal.
It's going to be our first opportunity to sing Christmas music in the chapel this year.
Rufus Froud will be choir master tonight.
When I first started working here, I remember vividly arriving and hearing the choir sing for the first time. And just that thrill of the sound in the chapel. And there was an element of pinching myself that I couldn't quite believe that actually this was to become one of my regular places of work.
Chloe Morgan is singing soprano.
I always associate Hampton Court with Christmas. I sang here for Midnight Mass last year, and coming to this beautiful place at special times like Christmas is just very magical for me. It's slightly hard to focus when you just look around and you can just imagine all the stuff that happened here over the years. When I walked in today, I was on my own and there weren't many lights on, and a door sort of creaked behind me, and it's a bit chilling, but it's very exciting.
Chloe is performing a very special solo. Even for an experienced singer like her, it's a daunting task.
I'm also a bit nervous because I'm doing the Once in Royal solo, and it doesn't matter how old I am, I still feel like a 12-year-old. And yeah, so hopefully it'll go well.
Coming up, Hampton Court has its grand Christmas opening.
It's lovely to have people back, to have people getting in the festive spirit, brings the whole palace to life.
And we discover Henry VIII's favourite winter sport.
It would have been an incredible sight to see.
It's the day of Hampton Court's Christmas opening.
It's lovely to have people back, to have people getting in the festive spirit. It's really lovely to see. And just really, it brings the whole palace to life.
For the staff, all the hard work of the last few days has finally paid off.
I look forward to it every year. It's kind of like Santa's come and decorated everything. It feels somehow brighter.
From Fountain Court to the Great Hall, the palace reflects its magnificent Christmas traditions, both past and present.
Everybody walks around at Christmas time with a big smile on their face because it really takes you back to a different time with these magnificent trees and this kind of atmosphere that you just don't get anywhere else.
The Christmas decorations are a hit, especially the huge tree in Clock Court.
They're taking photographs and they're really just bringing the palace to life. So it's a wonderful time to be here at Christmas.
Throughout the day, tourists have been enjoying skating on the ice rink at the palace entrance. They might not be aware this Christmas sport goes back centuries. Warder Errol Clayton has been researching its history.
Ice skating came over to Britain in the 1600s from the Netherlands. Back then they didn't have the technology obviously to create and maintain the ice, so they used a mixture of hog's lard and salt to make it, and it became really popular with the aristocracy. So from then on, ice skating has really become something of a tradition of Christmas. We never had an ice rink here in the time of Henry VIII, but in 1536 the Thames froze. So the king, his wife Jane Seymour and his daughter Mary got wrapped up in their furs and they rode on the ice on horseback from St. Paul's all the way down to Greenwich to celebrate the 12 days of Christmas. It would have been an incredible sight to see.
Away from the ice rink, inside the Chapel Royal, it's time for the annual carol service. This year, although there can't be a congregation, for the very first time, it's being transmitted around the world on the internet. Chloe Morgan sings the opening solo.
Once in royal David's city stood a lowly cattle shed, where a mother laid her baby in a manger for
Hi, Errol.
Hello.
Should we look up?
Yeah, let's do it.
And as the sounds of carols float over this ancient palace, which has hosted so many celebrations over the centuries, the spirit of Christmas has well and truly arrived at Hampton Court.